So, so I'm Judy Goldstein, and I'm the Executive Director of Humanity in Action. And we have two major programs. You're all graduate students. Good, okay. So we have two major programs. One is a fellowship program, which is what we were just talking about before, which is for undergraduates. And last year we started a new program called Diplomacy of Diversity, which is for graduate students. And it's got two purposes. One is to increase the number of minorities who go into the foreign policy field. Professionals will be doing work in USAID or the State Department or international health organizations or it's NGOs as well as governmental organizations. So that's one purpose, is simply to increase the number, because the establishment of the foreign policy world has been traditionally white, male, not very diverse at all. The second point of it is more complicated, but I think even more interesting, and that is to make a connection intellectually and in other ways between issues of diplomacy and diversity. That is, to try to have the fellows through our program understand that diversity issues or pluralistic issues are exceedingly important in the dynamics of national policy and then international policy. So, for example, in Europe now, issues of migration are challenging, deeply challenging European societies, also our society as well. But in Europe, because of the European Union, these issues, which have always been considered to be national issues, really become international issues. Our perception is that people who come from minority backgrounds have a much better understanding of pluralistic issues than others. Or at least they have a perspective to provide to the discussion. For example, discussions about national security. Because people who come from minority backgrounds have to negotiate identities that, in a sense, are part of a larger nation, but also you are somewhat different and put aside. So let me give you the starkest example I can of national security issues. I was in the Netherlands a few weeks ago at a meeting with the woman who is the foreign secretary, the highest ranking civil servant in the foreign ministry. When we met, the Dutch had just decided that they would join the American-led coalition to send fighter planes to Iraq. Not to Syria, but to Iraq. What happened was that there was a backlash to some extent in the Netherlands from Muslim populations who did not support this position. And there were some radical Muslims who, in fact, went to Syria and have been fighting in Syria and Iraq. They've come back to the Netherlands and said, you know, and espoused very strong jihadist beliefs. The reaction of the Dutch military was to tell its soldiers not to wear their uniforms on the streets so that they would not be targets of opposition. So from the perspective of this woman, head of the foreign ministry, when she's making foreign policy decisions, she now has to think about the domestic reverberations of those decisions. So it's not just something that's happening out there. It is, in fact, something that will have repercussions inside the country. So the need to understand the nature of pluralism in the Netherlands, of the reactions, the cohesiveness, the attitudes of the Muslim populations, and their relationship to the non-Muslim, the host society, becomes very, very important. So we're trying to say that the people who can give an enormous amount of insight into these issues are minorities, and that you don't take minorities into the foreign policy establishment because you didn't have them there before. You don't do it as a kind of tokenism or to catch up. You do it because there is enormous value from the perspectives of minorities. However, the program, both the undergraduate program and the graduate program, is a program that deals with minority issues, but it is not for minorities. It's really a pluralistic program, so that while we talk a great deal about minority issues, it has to be done in a very mixed way in order to be valid. So we started Diplomacy and Diversity last year. It was a 4-week program. It is completely funded. Anybody who goes into it has no financial obligation whatsoever. In fact, there's even a stipend that goes with it. You're very well taken care of. I think too well taken care of, but that's, what can I tell you? The funder is generous. Last year it was 4 weeks, 2 weeks in Washington, a lot of it based at the Council on Foreign Relations, and 2 weeks in Paris. This year it will be a week in Washington, a week in, or 10 days in Berlin, a week in Paris, or maybe a week in Brussels. We're not quite sure which it will be. It says on the thing that it will be Paris, but it may not be. We're not sure exactly how that's going to work out. The group consists of 24 people. 17 are Americans and 7 are Europeans. From our experience, the Americans overwhelm the Europeans, which is not a good thing. But we can't control it because Americans are aggressive and assertive, and they think they know everything, and they're not sure that anybody else's opinion is worth much. But hopefully during the program that attitude changes to some extent. It's a very intense program, as is the undergraduate one. You work hard, you think hard. At the end of it, you have to, or during the program, you have to begin to develop an idea for a serious scholarly paper, a paper that is publishable, and a paper that can deal with any issue anywhere in the world, but pluralism has to be, this relationship between pluralism and democracy has to be expressed in it. We have very tough standards. I would say that we are now receiving the final drafts of the papers from last year's group, which was a very smart group. Half of the papers are excellent, a quarter are okay, and probably a quarter will not be published, because they're just not good enough for us. Before getting into the specifics of diplomacy and diversity, what I'd like to do is to show you a video, well, 2 videos. The first video is about humanity in action itself, and then the second video is about the diplomacy program. So the reason for showing you the video about humanity in action is that we've been running these programs. We're going into the 17th year. We're only going into the 2nd year for diplomacy. So essentially the organization is built around the undergraduate experience. Stepping up to the graduate level is something we've wanted to do so that we can begin to provide opportunities for fellows as they develop their careers. But the essence and the sort of the quality of humanity in action, the values, the form of it has been developed through this undergraduate program. So I want to show that. Then I'll show the diversity video, which is done in the same way. It's not quite as good, I don't think. But
It's not this one, is it?
If we go back to the home site, if we go back to, and then scroll down to the 3rd, this is the video.
Yes.
Anyway, let me just give 2 other aspects about it. The summer program, or the fellowship program, takes place in 5 countries: France, Germany, Poland, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And those programs focused on diversity and extremism. That's the focus. Pluralism, resistance to extremism, which means focusing now on Islamophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism. Those are the issues that are really the dominant issues. And the study is done in each of these countries, and if you're in the Dutch program, you're going to focus on Dutch issues. Because that's the context. You'll have Dutch fellows in the program. The program, half of them are Dutch, half American, and maybe 2 Bosnians or Turks or Greeks or Ukrainians. The diplomacy program is really focused on international issues, the broad scale. So it is not nationally directed. They're looking at big issues on an international scale. So let me show you this program first so that you get a sense. When you go into the program, you become part of the organization of Humanity in Action. So we've had 1,400 fellows. We now have only 24 diplomacy fellows. When you take the next class, we'll have another 24, but you're overwhelmed by these other people. And the organization really, the dynamic of it flows from this. Though we integrate, and this year the diplomacy program will end in The Hague in an international conference with the 100 undergraduate fellows. Okay, so let's do this one, and then we'll go on.
There's always work to be done. The bedrock of all that has to be human dignity, human rights, and every human voice.
Humanity in Action is one of the great organizations that are making a great contribution, not just to America, but to people all around the world. It is our calling, it is our mission to respect the dignity and the worth of every human being, whether they live in Europe or in Africa or Asia, in Central or South America, or in the United States of America. In the final analysis, we are one people, one family, one house. We all live in the same house. We all have an obligation, a mission, and a mandate to do what we can to save and spare this little piece of real estate we call Earth.
So that's the heart of it. Then we'll do the video. Yeah, that's right. Good.
The Diplomacy and Diversity Fellowship is a unique international educational program bringing together a diverse group of 24 young leaders from Europe and the United States. In a highly competitive process, Humanity in Action selects fellows from a broad range of academic interests, backgrounds, and professional ambitions.
I joined the military as part of a dare that I dared myself.
Currently PhD student in Rome.
I've done a lot of work in public health, both in the US and in Rwanda.
Spending a month in the United States and Europe, the fellows explore complex diversity issues and their impact on international affairs.
International affairs are supposed to include people and populations across borders and create policy for people involved. Whenever there's people involved, there are diversity issues.
It's important to think about all aspects of diversity. There's diversity of actors, which is really important. The diversity of countries and diversity of NGOs.
The program analyzes challenging global issues, including security, trade, economics, and ethnic and religious conflict.
I don't think I have ever been part of a program that is so rigorous.
Leaders from government, academia, business, media, and nonprofits engage the fellows in interactive conversations.
I really liked that many speakers were transparent between many different fields.
It brings in people that are working with community-based organizations, and it brings in ambassadors and people who are really creating policies as well.
For every single person here, it's impossible to walk out of here and feel like they're not thinking about things in very different ways.
One of the things that I love about this program is the interaction with the fellows. I think that's the strength of the program and the selection of the fellows.
People are extremely inspiring. People are very achieved.
When I got bios of all the people I'm going to be on the program with, that was very intimidating. And then when we met and everyone talked about what he or she is doing, with almost every person I wanted to keep on asking, and how's your research, how is that?
The Diplomacy and Diversity Fellowship promotes innovative approaches to diplomacy in a changing world.
So that's it. Why don't you, do you have questions? And then we'll go from there about, what it's like, what you need to do to get in, what you think. Yeah, oh, good. Yes, go.
Start off with what do you need to get in? Yeah.
That's the first question all of you answer. These students are so competitive. It's incredible. Well, you have to be, I'll tell you what, you have to be, we have to be in graduate school, you have to be a master's or PhD candidate. You have to be somewhat accomplished with a good record because it's a very demanding program. You have to have shown not only a scholarly interest in the field that you're in, but to some extent, what have been your experiences, your practices? You need to be informed, but not doctrinaire. You need to be interested in hearing what other people have to say, which means speakers, who sometimes will present views that you don't agree with. And it means fellows who come from different backgrounds who are going to present ideas that are challenging and different. It's important that people have views, but not that they be self-righteous. This is not an easy thing to negotiate, because part of it because of the nature of education in the United States, and part of it is because we are an increasingly polarized society in which people have very, very strong views about many very sensitive and complicated issues. So we're looking for people who present themselves as having strong ideas, but they have to be willing to listen to other people. This is now how do we know that? That's not so easy, because you're also incredibly skilled at presenting yourselves, and and sensing what we want to know from you. You're really good at getting what you want, and that's why you're here. So how do we know who really is going to be interesting and creative and imaginative and committed, but willing to listen? It's a gut feeling. It's to some extent you take a risk with us and we take a risk with you. I don't know, does that answer the question at all? Okay. I mean, we're looking for interesting people. We're interested for people who like to talk and to engage and to think, and who want to work hard, who are just not going to be interested in this program because it's going to give you a very good credential, which it will, or that it will give you exposure to very interesting people, which it will, but people who will really give something to it and get something out of it. We just make a very big investment in you, and we work very hard to make very good programs, but they're only going to be great if the fellows are responsive and are engaging with each other and engaging respectfully with each other, respectfully with the speakers. And that doesn't come naturally at all. It's something you have to work on. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned undergraduate programs.
Yeah.
Are there any, or are
Yeah.
they similar to this program? It's like I kind of got scared when I heard that you have to be a graduate student to apply for
You're
this.
an undergraduate?
I'm undergraduate.
That's okay. So we just had a session on the undergraduate program. Well, that's okay. That's okay. But so here, the difference is that the undergraduate program is really nationally oriented.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place in one of 5 countries.
Mm-hmm.
It is for undergraduates. One assumes that undergraduates are less mature than graduate students, or one assumes that graduate students are more mature than undergraduates. It's not exactly true. It's not exactly true. So it's not just age. Yeah.
You mentioned a stipend. How much is the stipend?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's last year was $2,500. I don't know what it's going to be this year, to be perfectly honest with you. We have a stipend so that there are people who need to work, that they can come on the program and be compensated. But I don't know what, to be perfectly honest, what it is this year. There is a stipend. Yeah.
Does the research for the written portion of the fellowship happen during the program?
Not really. Not really. The intensive research will happen afterwards. But certainly we hope that the exposure to various speakers will provide a basis for the kind of article, or an inspiration, or that you'll be able to use them. Yeah.
So I know that they're looking for a lot of people from different fields and different majors,
Yeah.
different backgrounds, right? Is there like a certain type of focus that you guys are looking for, like in terms of like health, or like, cause if you're specializing in, like, I'm in public health, so
Good.
if I wrote about like my research paper, I want to do something on health and diversity. Like, are you guys looking for like a more general sense, or is it like more like, oh, since my specialty is this, like I want to look into this, or is it more like you guys want us to be more flexible and look into more?
Well, if you're coming on the program because you're basically interested in public health issues,
Right.
then probably 80% of the program will not interest you. But if you're looking to see how public health issues relate to other issues, then it should all interest you.
Right. I'm looking into global health law. Seems kind of relevant.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's up to you also to make connections. It's up to you, in fact, to be interested in things that would relate. I mean, national security is going to relate to public health. Ebola is the perfect example of that.
Right.
I mean, resources, the distribution of resources, economic issues will relate to public health. So, but it's up to you. But if you're looking, to get information for a specific kind of interest that you have in public health, such as when you take a course, then you'll be disappointed.
I don't know. Since you said that like you want us to give something and then we get something out of it.
Yeah.
So like given that like our backgrounds are different, like we can bring like what we translate type of thing, but like is that what we should like focus our applications on?
I'm not gonna give you the answer. I'm here to present to us what you think you could bring to the program.
Okay.
And why you think the program is relevant to your interests. But public health is certainly key, and an important issue. And when we talk about diplomacy, I don't know, we did it because I think of the alliteration, but certainly public health issues are very critical parts of diplomacy. What are our relations with Sierra Leone and Nigeria and all, because of health crises, or it's really very, very relevant. These things used to be separated, but I think they shouldn't be any longer. Yeah.
I was wondering, also about the research papers.
Yeah.
Whether they are typically more policy oriented, or whether they could also be more regional.
Whatever. As long as they're, good justification or rationale and enough meat for you to, to work with. No, we depend upon your coming up with things that are, of interesting and which you find interesting, but which will make a contribution to the field, because most graduate schools in international relations, for example, do not even consider pluralism as a subject worthy of discussion. But health issues are, often based upon pluralistic differences. No. So, are there other questions? Okay, so this is the booklet that we put together, and it starts with what the fellowship is about, and I have to tell you that we really mean what we say about what it is. It's not. How do I put this? Many times people apply to the program because it sounds interesting, and they apply because it's a good credential, and they apply because it's very selective, and they think that it's going to be something very good on the resume, and they also want some of the advantages that the program offers. Okay, but we also say what the fellowship is about, the vision and the approach, and we mean it. We really do. So you have to be rather honest and to test whether what you envision you want from the program is what we say the program is about. That's a real skill. We also insist that we have no computer or telephone use during the program. It's a zone that is free. So if people go through withdrawal during the program, but we absolutely insist upon it. Our assumption is that you can't pay attention to two things at the same time. And there's no tweeting, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. Or whatever, save it for later, but we don't do it.
Is photo taking allowed?
Yes. Oh, sure. All right, so in this book we put together, it has the biographies of all the fellows, and I think we'll find it on the website. And then, then let me just read out to you what we went through. The opening day was Introduction to Diplomacy and Diversity, and then it was Citizenship, Immigration and Pluralism in the U.S., Diversity Matters in International Affairs. We were at the German Marshall Fund for that, the Council on Foreign Relations. The next day was Democratization and Youth Politicization in North African States, U.S. engagement in Africa, American democracy in a changed world. And there was a reception by the next day was the importance of promoting innovation and entrepreneurship in public-private development in emerging markets, such as Haiti and the Caribbean. The current status of Arab-Israeli peace process. This was before the summer, so that doesn't have much relevance. The international impact of citizenship journalism, the tradition of American philanthropy in international affairs, the challenges and opportunities of the expansion of American higher education abroad, the influence of sports and geopolitics. Then the next day, perspectives on foreign policy process, perspectives on diversity and diplomatic engagement in Latin America, representing diverse nations and interests in international financial negotiations, Iranian-American relations and the burden of history. So, all over the place. This was just Washington-based. Just looking quickly, public-private partnerships and counterterrorism, update on the situation in Ukraine, security and anti-discrimination in Europe, the work of the Helsinki Commission, U.S. grand strategy for the next generation, Turkey, the United States and the European Union, the role of technology and innovation in government and international affairs, then a whole subject on interest groups in domestic and foreign affairs, new and non-traditional actors in international affairs, media groups in foreign policy, influence of European institutions in international affairs, a visit now in Paris, a visit to Brussels, diversity in policies and initiatives, what else? A bank holiday, well, that doesn't affect you. Traditional strategies for peace and security, the new technologies and the social good. And this is a very different approach when you're in Paris, when you address this question in Paris from when you address it in the States. Migration in Europe, under that history of migration waves in Europe, Roma issues in Europe, citizenship and diversity issues in comparative perspective, Egypt at a crossroad. So you see it's just all over the place. And we pack in as much as we can. We did too much this year. It's always a tendency. And there's never enough time for discussion. But what else can I tell you? So you see, you get a sense of it's all over the place, which is interesting. Yeah.
Is there a Skype interview for this
Yep.
one as well? So
Yep.
it's the paper application along with,
Right.
or online application likely?
Right.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we got last year 400 applications. We took 17. We will cut it down to about 50 in the first round, and the application period ends very soon. We'll cut it down to 50. We'll interview 50, and we'll take 70. It's pretty competitive. Yeah.
When you say are we compensated for flights, or are we responsible for our own flights?
Well, for the diplomacy program, everything's paid for. The undergraduate program, we ask that the fellows pay for their international flight. If they can't do it after, in fact, trying to raise funds from their university or college, then we'll pay for it. If somebody's accepted, we will make sure that person can go on the program. But one of the things that we've learned is that colleges and universities have a deep investment in fellowship programs. The more fellowships you get, the better you look. The better the university or college can sell itself. So we say to the colleges and universities, we're providing an opportunity which enhances the education of the fellows, so therefore we'd like you to consider paying for the transportation, $1,000 or something like that. Some do and some don't. But diplomacy is not, diplomacy is all paid for. Yeah.
Look at the online application, it seems like there's no recommendation.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
But how many?
I don't know, you have to go through it. One?
Just one, and it's only a professional one. We can't have our professors do
Yeah.
it.
So one of the things that we learned from the last program is that experience in the workplace may make the fellows more open to discussion. If the only experience you've had is academic, then you may not have as rich resources to deal with the kinds of complexities and the collaborative nature of learning in the program. If you've had to work, you have to work for somebody, and somebody has to evaluate how well you've worked. So we're trying to learn more about the applicants and fellows by saying, if you've been in the workplace, and this is not true for the undergraduate program as much as the graduate program, that we'd like to know how you've operated in the workplace. That's the reason for that. And we're just trying to see what we can do to find more and more appropriate fellows for the program. Yeah.
Do fellows stay involved with Humanity in Action after they're finished?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of it is that you join the organization as a whole, that there are all sorts of opportunities that we try to provide. There are internships, which I'm not sure how appropriate they are for graduate students. So we have an internship 4 months in the European Parliament, working in the member's office, and then another 4 months working in a congressional office, the Lantos program. And then we have international conferences every year, and national conferences. And we have study trips. 3 of our diplomacy fellows, maybe 2, just went on a trip that we organized in Berlin with Greek students and senior fellows to deal with Greek issues or extremism. The Greek students came to Germany to see how Germany deals with extremist issues because it's such a serious problem in the East. But all the trips are open to. The diplomacy fellows become fellows in the program, and they just really enjoy all the aspects of the organization. And we put increasingly a lot of thought, and hopefully increasingly a lot of money, to the extent that we have it, into enriching the professional opportunities of senior fellows, of giving guidance and providing educational opportunities that they will find relevant to their professional lives. If people are going to stay, it's not an alumnus organization. It doesn't depend upon nostalgia, or it doesn't depend upon the good old college days. It really is something, I think, that depends upon the ongoing relevance of what we do to keep people connected, the relevance of our issues, and also the resources in the organization. And we assume that in 10 years, Humanity in Action Fellows will be leading figures in foreign ministries in at least 5 countries, and therefore they will have a connection to each other and a sense of trust and respect for each other, and basic common concerns. I mean, how do you keep yourself from burning out when you get to be 32 and you're the head of a Danish party running all of its parliamentary affairs? How do you keep from burning out? It's a question that they come back to us and say, can you help us work on? Yeah.
When will the papers be published? The previous ones?
Yeah, I don't know. We're working on them now. I think in the next month or 2, so you can see them. Sure. Any other questions? So I can't emphasize enough how demanding it is, how rigorous, how much we expect from the fellows, how much we expect them to behave well in the program, and to be attentive and to be alert all the time. We just want to build a cadre of people who are going to be leaders in the fields that we pursue. So far, we're doing fairly well. We're really pleased. And in the program, you'll see a number of senior fellows, or interact with a number of senior fellows who are already in positions of authority and competence. And that's interesting. One of our Dutch fellows has been just re-elected for a 2nd term to the European Parliament, and for her party, which is called D66, the Dutch party. For her party, she is the lead negotiator on technology issues and trading. What's it called? The trade agreement that's being negotiated between Europe and the United States. IPEC. I can't remember the acronym. What is it? Do you know? TTIP. TTIP. That's it. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. So she's in charge of it. I mean, to me, this is amazing. Another fellow is the assistant to the head of the Human Rights Department in the Foreign Ministry. Another one is the political advisor for the Benelux country at Microsoft. And you just take them off. So it's great. Let me think if there's anything else I can say about this. What have I left out?
The deadline's coming up, right?
The deadline's coming up very soon. So if you are going to apply, do it, soon. But also, don't show us that you've done it at the last minute. Because if it looks that way, it won't be as persuasive as one that's requires a certain amount of care.
What is the review committee like? Is it based on your particular field, or is it broad?
No, it's broad. It's absolutely broad.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're just people have a general interest in international issues.
Sure.
And a certain competence also. So what do you do?
I'm planning students.
You're what?
Planning.
You're planning. So planning in what?
Like urban development.
Yeah. Urban planning. On an international level?
Not on an international, not yet.
Not yet.
But it's very interdisciplinary, so a lot of fields feed into it.
Yeah.
So I feel like this would be a good move.
Well, certainly there are overwhelming international dimensions to that. And what do you do?
I'm in the clinical program.
That's right. You're in
But my undergrad was in neuroscience journalism and law.
Neuroscience journalism and law?
Yeah.
Neuroscience. Explain.
I majored in neuroscience. I had minor in journalism, and I did an emphasis in pre-law. So I worked at a law firm for a year before I went into public health, and I'm interested in global health issues. So I'm interested in more on global health law, and I'm actually working with operations law right now as a fellow.
USC and Washington.
Oh, good. Lovely. That's good. Business is international. You're an undergraduate?
International relations with a concentration in European foreign policy analysis.
This might be a very interesting program for you.
A little bit.
A little bit. Yeah?
I'm in global health leadership, MPH program.
The MPH, that means
Masters in Public Health.
Masters in Public Health. Yeah.
I'm getting a master's in environmental studies.
So that's really international.
Very global.
Very global. I think that's it. Good. Well, thank you for coming. If you have any other questions, just let us know. And if you do want to apply, do it soon. Okay.
Great. There was a sign-in sheet. Did that get around, actually? Somewhere? Okay. Great. If you haven't signed in already, it'd be great if you do. Thank you all. We'll stick
Thank you
around.
for coming. Here are a few flyers if you want to. They don't tell you too much, but they look pretty. So if you